All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really uniquely pragmatic blueprint for establishing a massive, self-sufficient colony on Mars. You know, usually when we talk about going to the red planet, the whole conversation gets completely hijacked by, well, renderings of sleek rockets and glowing sci-fi habitats. But the source material we're looking at today takes a totally different, incredibly grounded approach. It basically asks us to look past all that shiny metal and focus on the actual societal nuts and bolts required to not just visit Mars, but to permanently move 50,000 people there.
And right out of the gate, the source makes this really bold, foundational argument. Humanity has actually possessed the technical chops to travel to Mars for decades. Literally, they argue we've had the foundational rocketry and physics totally figured out since the 1970s. I mean, think about the Apollo missions for a second. The momentum was absolutely there, the math was there, the sheer engineering capability was already in our hands.
So, that naturally begs the million-dollar question, right? If we've had the technical capability for half a century, what exactly is holding humanity back? Like, if it's not a lack of scientific know-how, why haven't we planted a permanent flag yet? To answer that, we basically have to completely reframe how we look at space colonization.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 1, the Mars technology myth.
To completely shatter our preconceived notions about rocket science, the author argues that we're all just entirely distracted. We spend so much time debating what they call irrelevant tech issues. We argue over designing marginally better spacesuits, or sketching out these hyper-advanced spaceships, or even debating wild sci-fi concepts like cloning. The creator of this blueprint argues that obsessing over these arcane technical details is completely irrelevant to actually solving the colonization problem. They're just distractions from the real issues, which are, ironically enough, entirely earthly, political, and financial roadblocks.
Let's dig into that a bit more in Section 2, the true colonization barriers.
Okay, so if the tech isn't the hurdle, we really need to understand what's keeping this massive project grounded. The crucial point here is that our failure to reach Mars stems from two very earthly, deeply intertwined facts. Number one, a total lack of political will. And number two, a lack of financial wherewithal. It takes a monumental amount of unified global effort to pass the budgets, organize the labor, and actually commit to a multi-decade timeline. We haven't gone to Mars simply because we just haven't decided to pay for it or aligned our priorities to actually do it. It really is that simple, and yet, incredibly complex at the same time. The source really doesn't mince words about this either. Check out this direct quote. "The question of technology is irrelevant to this issue." Technology is basically just a sideshow from figuring out how to make these colonies manifest in the real world. Think about it. You could design the absolute perfect engine on paper, right? But if you don't have the economy to manufacture it, or the government backing to clear the airspace, it's never going to be anything more than just a really nice drawing.
So how do we fix it? That's Section 3, the Earth Embassy solution.
To overcome these absolute mountains of real-world barriers, the creator proposes a highly structured fix that begins right here at home. They call it the Earth Embassy. The big idea is to recruit humans to a staging ground on Earth where a mostly economically self-sufficient community prepares itself for transplantation to Mars. Because, let's be real, you can't just launch people into the void and say, hey, hope you figure out how to farm and govern yourselves in zero gravity, good luck. You have to build the foundation, the society, the economy, and the rules of engagement right here on Earth in a closed environment before a single person ever leaves the atmosphere. And the scale of this ambition? It's staggering. We are definitely not talking about sending a half-dozen highly trained astronauts to roughen in a tin can. No. This blueprint is specifically designed to transplant a fully functioning colony of 50,000 people. You need something like an Earth Embassy, because organizing 50,000 people requires incredibly robust systems. You are essentially building a small city completely from scratch.
So long before anyone even thinks about hitting the launch button, the Earth Embassy is going to methodically tackle 3 foundational steps. Step 1. Create the hardware and software they're actually going to use. Step 2. Build the internal economy. Like, how will these 50,000 people trade, work, and actually create value? And step 3. Establish the government. How are disputes settled? How are resources handed out? Doing all this ensures the residents are fully prepared to survive and thrive way before they face the harsh, unforgiving realities of the Martian surface.
Let's move on to Section 4, Proven Systems, Not Sci-Fi.
What I find really fascinating is that the methodology for running this Earth Embassy, and eventually the Mars colony, is totally grounded in reality. The source makes it a massive point to avoid waxing eloquent about bold, untested new programs of social organization.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel and come up with some brand new theoretical way for humans to interact. They call those sci-fi fantasies. Instead, this plan relies on proven methods. It's all about stitching together established social and economic frameworks that we already know work here on Earth. Because at the end of the day, humans are still humans, whether they're sitting in Ohio or the Valles Marineris.
Now you're probably wondering, wait, does the source ignore technology completely? Well, not exactly. But any technical plans that do get discussed, like specific spacecraft acting as an interplanetary backbone, are really just straw man proposals. The creator throws them in there to stimulate interest and give us a conceptual framework, but they know full well that by the time the massive financial and political hurdles are actually cleared, the final tech designed by the engineers is going to be far, far better than anything we could propose today.
This takes us to Section 5, the roadmap forward. Because let's face it, these socio-economic solutions are incredibly dense. The creator has mapped out a massive content roadmap to properly break down these financial and political fixes. To make it all digestible, the plan is to release short, 8-minute explanatory modules. The initial rollout kicks off with 10 installments published over a single month, and from there, the full series will expand to about 60 modules, released weekly over the course of more than a year. The format is highly intentional here. Those short bites allow people to actually process the complicated economic and political ideas without getting totally overwhelmed.
So what's actually in those 60 modules? Well, they fall into a few different categories, heavily focusing on the really practical stuff. Economics and government are right at the top, of course. Then there's the so-called 3 legs of the mission, which basically act as the foundation. But they don't ignore the human element either. Smaller categories will dive into the cultural aspects of the mission and even the deeper philosophical reasons for why we should bother going to Mars in the first place. Ultimately, the core message of this entire blueprint is that this extremely pragmatic plan can happen. It's an organizational challenge, sure, but it is not a pipe dream. The source closes their introduction with this really powerful thought. If we still have enough people left on the planet with gumption, bravery, and a spirit of adventure, it will happen. It's an incredible perspective that completely flips the script on space exploration. It leaves us with one final, super provocative question. If the technology isn't what's stopping us, do we still have the gumption and bravery to organize, fund, and actually execute this reality?